I know that today, we've been going over a lot of information, so thanks for being so attentive, and we're going to move into the field portion of today. Before we do that, I'm just going to introduce myself a little bit. As was mentioned earlier, my name is Amanda Ngola. You may have seen some emails from me. If you haven't, you certainly will come spring semester. You'll be hearing a lot more from me because all of you will be doing field next year. So I thought I'd just say a little bit about how I sort of came into this role in field education. And since I oftentimes don't get to work really closely with you students, like one-on-one, I thought this would be sort of my opportunity to at least tell you a little bit about myself. So I grew up in Evanston, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago, and my dad was a lawyer, my mom was a teacher, which a college, I think, advisor once told me is a really common sort of parent occupation for social workers, and something about it sort of being the combination of education and justice sort of put together. So I don't know if that's really true, but that was kind of true for me. I, like Angela, majored in college in sociology and Spanish. I was going to do Spanish education, but ended up going into social work because I wanted to do counseling. And my mom, being in the schools, knew a lot of school social workers and kind of talked about what social work was and the social justice aspect of it, the working with people. And it really fit for me because it's I felt like it was this sort of applied sociology. So sort of a way to take action around some of the social problems that I had been learning about in undergrad. So I went on to Washington University in St. Louis, where I got my master's, and I focused in mental health. After I graduated, I worked in community mental health with kids and families, and then ultimately I ended up here in Madison working at University Health Services, which is where Jennifer did her internship. But I worked with college students doing counseling. I also was our outreach associate director. All the while I was a social worker there, I was able to supervise students and provide clinical supervision for the 17 years that I was there, and that was something that I really loved. It was an opportunity to teach students all that I knew, a way to sort of impart that, but there was this great sort of reciprocal relationship around them teaching me things that they're learning in the classroom and me sort of giving back, and I loved that students brought something and were also willing to take something. I then moved into a field faculty position, the mental health field seminar, and I'll describe a little bit more about that in the part-time program. And then I became the associate field director, which means that I oversee the field program for the part-time program. And I'm in my third year of that right now. So I love field education. I think lots of students, while, I don't know, we'll take a pulse on the audience today, but sometimes it can be a little bit anxiety producing for people. But I think oftentimes this is what people remember most about their masters. It's their chance to really kind of apply what they're learning. It's where the rubber meets the road. You're able to practice, work with people, all those reasons that probably brought you to social work. You're able to really practice some of those. So that's some of the things that I really love. I also know that through field education, this is the place where there's just tremendous growth, not only in terms of your knowledge, your ability, but also personally, professionally, interpersonally. So these are things that are really interesting to me and I think really benefit you as professionals. So today we're going to talk about really the nuts and bolts of field. I'm kind of a person that gets right to it. I want you to kind of know the bottom line. So it's really comprehensive, but just know you don't have to know all of this. Everything that we talk about here today is also located in the field handbook, which is on our website, so you'll have access to that. We'll have touch-in meetings come November. If you have questions, you'll be meeting with your field faculty to answer questions. So there's lots of places to continue to reinforce this information, to ask questions, all of that. I want you to have an idea of what to expect, start thinking about some of these aspects of field as you prepare for next year, and kind of get an idea about what our program's like, okay? Many of you have BSWs, so some of you have done placements before. I want you to listen today closely for some of the differences in our program and maybe your program. There's lots of ways that it may be very similar, but there's also probably some ways that it's different. So I want you to listen carefully for those too. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the nuts and bolts, as I mentioned. We're going to be talking about, we have a speaker who's a supervisor and someone from the community who's going to be talking about interviewing skills and professionalism. We'll take a break, and then we'll have an officer from the UW Police Department talking about safety and security. These are the main points that we have found over the years, and also based on our accreditation standards, that every student needs to learn about to be successful in field. So that's why we've really included these particular 3 sessions. At 3:30, we'll give you all an opportunity to kind of get into cohort groups based on your focus area, and maybe that's another chance to connect. Those are the folks that might be in your field seminar. Maybe you are coming from a similar area. You might be able to carpool, things like that. So we want you to have a chance to meet others that'll be in your particular focus area. And then we'll wrap up and do evaluations and sign out. You attending field orientation today, these 4 hours will count toward your fall field hours. So just so you know that and it's on the record, this time will count toward your hours. All right. Okay, so I'd like to introduce you to our field program, the folks that are in it. Our field faculty are amazing. They're knowledgeable, they're experienced. Most of them are currently working in the field and have been doing so for many years. So they have so much to offer you, and they're excellent teachers as well. The first person at the top is Amy Basil. You may have seen her out at the table. She's our field program assistant. She often sends you emails. She's our guru when it comes to how do you fill out the background check, or where do I find this form, or some of those kinds of questions. She's a great resource for you in that area. That's me in the middle. I, as I mentioned, oversee the part-time program, field education. Part of my role is supporting the field faculty, working with policies. I work really closely with Audrey Kahn, who's the next person on the list, or whose photo's up there. She's the field director, and she works mostly with the full-time program and the BSW program. Together, we make the sort of the field office. Next, I'll just quickly go through the Eau Claire field faculty. Those are folks that you probably won't know, but they're the ones that run the field seminar in Eau Claire. So we have Jody Glaspie, who does the Children, Youth, and Family. Heidi Frank, she does mental health field unit. Julie Tallard Johnson, she's the generalist field seminar leader. And Amanda Neckar, who isn't photographed here, but she also has a mental health field unit. The next folks under the Madison field faculty, those are folks that you may be working with. So we have Jenny Brongen, who is the school sort of person. She has a background in school social work, and she teaches our Children, Youth, and Family Welfare seminar. Jeannie Ferguson also teaches the Children, Youth, and Family Welfare field unit. She has a background in child protective services. Amanda Zulke is next, kind of going down, sort of going clockwise here. She has the long hair. Amanda Zulke, she does the generalist field unit, which is working in community agencies. And next we have Kristen Berkey, right below her with the dark hair and the glasses. She also does the generalist field unit. Next, kind of moving left, we have Holly Pagel. She has a background in AODA and works for the county. She does our mental health field unit. Kind of below her and to the left, we have Naomi Takahashi. She also has a mental health field unit. And lastly, we have Kathleen Krishnavik, sort of midway up. She does our health and aging field unit. So if you're in your generalist year, you're going into year 2 of the 4-year program, you'll be working with either Amanda or Kristen. If you are going into your year 4, when you're in year 4 and you're advanced generalist, you'll be working with one of the other field faculty who are in your particular focus area. And I'll talk a little bit more about how those decisions are made, which field unit you end up going into. Okay. All right, so now I kind of want to take a minute for you all to just, I don't know, check in with each other. So you've had a chance to meet each other at lunch earlier today. I'd like you just to meet with a neighbor, if there's only 3 people at your table, together, talk about how you're feeling about field. Just share some of the feelings you have around that. And also just share with each other some of the questions, maybe 1 or 2 questions that you might have, and that hopefully we'll be addressing today, okay? Maybe just take a couple minutes to do that. Great, so who would like to volunteer? This is my chance to kind of get a pulse on a reading of the room. So what are some of the feelings that came up around how people are feeling about field? Yes.
Hello everyone, my name is Danielle. Nice to meet you all. I'm a very vibrant person, by the way. So I'm trying to be quiet at my table. I think, one of the bigger issues or topics that we discussed is that balance of the financial piece of it. And when you think about field placement, and I was, telling everyone at my table that, okay, so if I'm working 40 hours a week, and this paper says we have to do 12 to 15 hours, how many days at work am I going to have to put in? How am I going to present this to my employer that says, by the way, I need you to grant some leniency here? So I think that financial and being able to just kind of like balance that. And I can't speak for everyone else, but I have kids, and it's like, okay, well, what about the kids in the process? Because they might have to feed themselves a couple of nights. And just kind of like really addressing that. I mean, I'm one of those people that I want to address the topic that everybody else is thinking about, because my bills don't go anywhere. Rent, mortgage, car notes, like they still coming every day, and they have this unnecessary stress. And so it's like, how do you deal with that? So I'm gonna shut up on that.
So I thank you for saying that, because I imagine that there are a bunch of people in here that have that same question. People have busy lives and a lot to juggle. So maybe the nerves or just sort of the unknown of it. How are we going to juggle work, bills, kids, our internship, studying, all of that? So this is great. And this is why we're doing the orientation at this point in time, so that you can start to think about this, figure things out, consult with other people, whether that's students who have done this before, me, your instructors. There's a lot of people for support, starting to think about who in my family can support me, how will I have that conversation with my employer, all of these kinds of things. So great. Are there other questions or feelings that came up, something different that we haven't talked about yet? Yes.
One of the things that I talked about is that for somebody like me who has been working for a long time here in Dane County, and I work for Dane County, and that's where a lot of placements happen, and so like finding a fit for like someone who is, older, has experience, because I've seen like a lot of interns come in and have very different, experiences as far as working with the county, where there are some people who give you more opportunities to do a lot of things, and then there are some who aren't necessarily the same way, or you don't get the same type of experience. So like finding the right fit, so that like halfway through or quarter way through, I'm not like, I'm wasting my time here, because I don't like to waste my time. And if I'm not happy, I'm not the vibrant person. I'm the bitchy person that's like, no, this is not, no, you wasting my time. I gotta do something else. So to find.
Yeah, so where do I fit in? If I have experience and I know, one of a large system of social service in our community, where will I still learn something? I want to make sure that I'm still learning. And I think you've got the right attitude, and that's what we want for you too. And I think your question fits in really well with our field model, which I'll be explaining in a little bit. Because I think it helps to address some of that. The idea that we're all coming from different places, have different levels of experience, have different things that we want and need from our internship, from our master's program, and we want to be able to address that. So great, thank you for bringing that up. Other thoughts, feelings? Yes.
I know a lot of us already sort of work in the social service field, and I'm just wondering, like, and work at agencies where they do have interns placed. So I'm just wondering, like, what does it look like having a placement at your place of employment? Because obviously you want to keep learning different things, and how many hours do you put in?
Yeah. So a question about, is it possible or how does it work for someone to do their field placement where they also work? We're not going to go into a lot of detail about that today, but I can tell you that it is possible to do a placement in your place of employment. There's a process for that. There's an application that has to be filled out, and it involves a lot of pre-planning. To do one's placement in their place of employment means that they need to be doing really separate work. So separate clients, separate supervisor, separate duties. Maybe you have a separate office, you're in a separate building. So not every agency is going to fit the criteria for that, but if you work in a large, say, county agency where they have child protective services and adult services and behavioral health, there may be opportunities to do a placement where you also work. If that's something that's of interest to you, we will have an opportunity in November to talk specifically about that when you get connected with your field faculty in next spring. That's also the main person that you're going to be talking to about that, to kind of see, is this an option that would fit for me? How do I go about the process? What does this look like? So thank you. Yes?
I'm just curious about, I live in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, so it's pretty far away.
Yeah.
It's an hour and a half drive here. And like, how do you guys reach out to places, you know, other than in Dane County?
So how will I find a placement if I'm not in Dane County? Can I find a placement there? The short answer is yes, and I'm going to go into more detail about that when we talk about the placement process. But yeah, we have, I mean, a lot of our students aren't in Dane County, and they find placements, or they have placements that are outside of Dane County. That's very common and sort of standard in the part-time program. So yeah, we'll talk about it. Okay, great. So these are, oh, one more?
One more. Are all placements either like government agency or nonprofit, or do private?
We do all kinds of agencies, yep, and I have a slide about that to kind of give you some ideas, but yeah, we do, yeah, we have a variety, yeah. Okay, great questions. So we talked a little bit more, or Angela Willits talked a little bit more about the mission of the school, and I bring it up here because it fits in well with field education being our signature pedagogy. And that's really sort of a fancy way of saying that the Council on Social Work Education recognizes that field education is a central and critical way that students are acclimated to the profession of social work. So as you work with your supervisor in your agency, you're learning how to you know, how to function in the context of a social service agency. You're learning how to sort of develop your professional identity as a social worker. You are developing your critical thinking skills. Why is it this way? Why are we doing it that way? Is this policy disproportionately affecting certain populations over others? So these are things that you're going to be thinking about and doing in your placement. You'll also have the opportunity to practice competent and ethical practice, develop self-understanding and reflection, incorporating feedback from your supervisor, from your clients, from your peers. This is also a critical piece of learning that takes place during your field education experience. There's lots of articles that kind of talk about the developmental stages of students in their internships. You know, oftentimes, and it isn't necessarily true of everyone, but typically, you know, there's sort of this anticipation, everyone's sort of nervous, am I gonna get this right? I'm excited to go in and do my work. It can kind of flow into more of a disillusionment stage where you're like, ooh, maybe there's a conflict that you have with your supervisor, or this isn't exactly what I thought it was gonna be like. Sometimes this happens around November for students. Then it kind of flows into a competence stage where you're feeling more like, okay, I'm getting the hang of this, I'm doing the right thing, I know what I'm doing, and then the placement sort of ends. So that's sort of that termination phase where you're saying goodbye to clients, you're saying goodbye maybe to the program because you're graduating. So there's sort of this, it culminates in this termination. This image here represents, I think, some of the interpersonal and professional learning that can also take place during a placement. It's called the Johari Window. Has anybody ever heard of this before? Okay, yeah. So when I worked at UHS, this is something that I would commonly talk to people about when I was sort of helping them to get interested in group therapy. And not that this is the same as group therapy, but I think that there's a lot of value in sort of looking at this. So as individuals, we could sort of look at ourselves in this 4-quadrant model. The open quadrant is, and there's sort of the outside you see known to self, not known to self, and then on the, I don't remember if it's the X or Y, but not known to others and known to others. So in this open quadrant, this is the aspect of ourselves that we know about ourselves and that others know about us. Maybe it's, you know, what kind of a student we are, or how we dress, or the colors we like. It's things that we're pretty open about talking about. People may even be able to observe them in us. We're an open book with relation to this. Moving into the blind quadrant, those are things that we don't know about ourselves, but by getting feedback from other people, specifically your supervisor, you're gonna learn more about things. So that may be, you know, skills content area, like how to do a psychosocial assessment. It might be exploring your feelings around working with certain clients, or why certain things tend to be harder than others as you're doing your work. And then you kind of move into the hidden. That's the part of ourselves that we don't disclose to everyone unless maybe they ask. But through our disclosure, maybe in field seminar, we're talking about things that trigger us, or why it is that we decided to go into social work. So these things that we are sharing with other people and we're getting feedback from other people help us to kind of move more into this unknown and sort of increase this openness. So the last quadrant are things that we don't know and that others don't know about us. So as we're getting feedback and we're disclosing, we're lessening that unknown part and we're increasing the open part. And that really speaks to us taking risks. You know, this is something that you've heard a lot about today. We encourage you to take some risks, to make mistakes, because that's where the growing comes. And so this is to kind of represent a little bit of that. Does anyone have thoughts about this or questions about it? Okay. I think a big part of being social workers and also social work students is sort of dealing in ambiguity. You're going to find that a lot in your placements. Some things, it's like you want to know the answer. Your clients are wanting you to give them the answer. They're pulling that from you. And sometimes we just don't know the answer. We have to be able to sit with that. We have to be able to work with other people in that space. So for some of us, that's a big growth edge, just being able to tolerate ambiguity and being flexible. But that's something that I think we work on a lot during field. Asking for help and being assertive are also things that can be personal challenges for people sometimes. And those are things that you might be challenged on, you know, in the coming year. So just to kind of put that out there. But all of this is good because this helps us in being more professional and developing in our abilities as a practicing competent social worker. Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the structure of field education. I'm not going to go a lot into this because you all know that we have a part-time program and a full-time program in both the Eau Claire and the Madison sites. There are identical requirements for all programs in our school. And that's because our requirements are our requirements, the guidelines for field, they all come from and sort of are born from the Council on Social Work Education meeting those competencies that Angela talked about earlier. So there's really one field program, even though we have two sort of technical programs within the school. All right, so let's talk a little bit about field terminology. And I bring this up because terms are kind of used differently at other schools, or you may hear people saying things differently, but just so that we're all on the same page, I feel like it's useful just to go over this. So a field faculty is the person who's going to be teaching your seminar. They also work to place you in your agency. They are really essentially the hub of this program, and they are your main point of contact once you are connected with them. Your field placement is what we call an internship or a practicum. We typically call it a field placement in our program. Your agency supervisor is the person who's on site in the organization and providing your weekly 1 hour of supervision. Your task supervisor might be someone else in your agency who provides some guidance or supervision to you in the work that you're doing there, but they may not necessarily be your official agency supervisor, but it's someone else in the agency who's helping you to learn. The Associate Director of Field Education is the person who I am one of the people that approve your place of employment application. I send out emails about the process. I sort of work with you and the program in maybe an indirect way, but I'm also very integral in our program. And then our Director of Field Education does that same thing. We work very closely together. She is the person that does what I do, but with the full-time program and the BSW program. All right, so the components of field education. We have two components, and that's the placement and the seminar. So let's see. So those of you, okay, so the field placement, let's start with that. So it's a 1 academic year long placement. That means that when you commit to a placement in the beginning of the year, you're going to be in that placement for both semesters, fall and spring. We ask that you do make this commitment. It's not common that it changes. You're not to end your placement on your own or anything like that. You're making a year-long commitment to that agency. The field seminar runs concurrent to your placement. So sometimes a question comes up, can I start my placement early? The answer is no, and that's because in our model, the placement and the seminar run together so that you can have that additional learning that goes along, and opportunities to process and opportunities to kind of get the most out of your placement. So for those of you who had BSWs and have done a placement before, tell me some of the things, and I imagine that some of you may have had field seminars. What was that seminar like? Can some people share? Yes.
My name is Janice. Everyone. I was at SIU, which is in Carbondale, Illinois, and I interned at a Boys and Girls Club. So I worked with, high school students who were getting a high school diploma and did social emotional stuff. But I also ran a GED program with the adults in the Carbondale community to help them get a GED that they needed for jobs or whatever. So the field seminar was essentially your cohort in a smaller number. For the most part, it was individuals who were kind of in your field. So a lot of people that I worked with were either in the schools or either in the community, and it was just therapy essentially. So we talked about, our responses to things that will happen. It could be from something small that, a parent cursed me out because I didn't help their kids with their homework, or some people experiencing some discrimination or, racial slurs, and just our reaction, how we should respond, being a social worker, not just a woman or a man or, adult or child, but just how you should respond as social workers. And it was just an opportunity for us to constantly get together and just figure things out. Some of the times, things we did not have answers for. If there's a community of people you don't know how to find access to care, then we will reach out to the liaison and things like that. But it was essentially therapy, your place, that small setting with your cohort to come together to figure out the whys, the hows. Sometimes people need reminders of why I'm even in social work, because you do experience burnout in your field placement depending on the demands. So all in all, therapy.
So Jasmine was saying it's very therapeutic. But I would say that's true here as well. So it's a supportive environment where you are getting consultation not only from your peers, but also from the field faculty who's running that seminar. It's a place to get consultation around situations going on, how can I bring this up with my supervisor? This is something that I'm experiencing, what should I do? This thing seems so minor now, should I address it? This is a place to kind of get that information. So I think a lot of people end up feeling like this is a great supportive environment and one of the places where they're learning the most and really being able to integrate that theory and skill that you're going to be learning this year into that placement again. The only thing I'll add is that you remain in your field seminar also for an entire year. So you'll be with that same group in fall and in spring. Okay. Okay. Now let's get to the meat of it. How does this placement process work? Okay, this is what people often have the most questions about. Before we sort of jump into it, I want to explain a little bit about our faculty-based model. And I sort of alluded to it earlier when the question came up about, what about me? I have a lot of experience. Or what about me? I'm totally new to social work. I don't know even what I want to do for a placement. So there's a wide gamut of experiences and hopes and preferences that people may have going into the placement process. And I think our faculty-based model is a way to address that. It's really a way to give individualized, specific attention to you in your placement. So the field faculty are the ones who will be meeting with you and talking with you about your career goals, your educational goals, helping you discern what is it that you want to do if you're unsure, helping you hone the direction if you are more certain about where you want to go. And through their relationships that they have with agencies already, they will help to make a match with you and a supervisor. In doing so, you will go on your interviews. If it doesn't work out, it's okay, you can try again. But really it's that I need someone with a supervisor with a lot of structure, and they're gonna kind of make sure that that's something that's important, that's matched up for you. So some schools do it a little bit differently. They may have a list of placements that you find, and then you will contact those to make interviews, and that's a great way to do it. We just do it a little bit differently. Okay, so any questions about that faculty model? Yes?
So I don't know who said this, and I'm sorry.
Oh.
But when do we meet? Do we meet one-on-one, and when does that take place?
Okay, nope, I haven't said it yet, but I'm just getting there. So perfect segue. So what's gonna happen, hold on, let me just make sure. Okay, so what's gonna happen in December, you will be getting an email from me that gives you a detailed outline of what you're going to need to complete to start the field placement process. That's going to include the background check and your field preference form. These forms are going to be in your student portal. You don't have to remember all these details, but you will go into there and you will fill this out. The field preference form asks you, where have you worked before? What kinds of populations do you want to work with? What's your focus area? It's going to ask you to submit a resume. Can you travel? Do you have transportation? So it's going to ask you all these kinds of questions that are going to give your field faculty some basic information in terms of you starting to think about a placement. The background check is something that you will do with an outside vendor. It costs $45. It's something that you will enter in your information and complete that. They ask you to submit information ahead of time if you've ever had any kind of violation on your record. It's sort of a standard background check that any sort of human service agency would do, but we get that information as well to kind of help with the placement process. Field orientation, it used to be that it was in February, but you are all doing that now, so that is something that you can already check off this list. Once you've completed your field preference form, I will get all of those and I will be assigning you to your field seminars and your field instructor. I will send out an email letting you know who your field instructor is, and that person will contact you to set up individual meetings. Those usually take place in early March. And they happen, they'll sort of set a schedule. Some folks do it over Skype. Maybe after class you're meeting with the field faculty. Sometimes people will meet, other places off campus, but you'll be doing that individually with your field faculty, setting up those meetings. Those meetings, again, they're going to talk with you about your preferences, your hopes, all of that. One thing I do like to emphasize is that, you know, some people come in with a really, I want to work at this specific agency. And some people come in and they're like, I don't know, I think I want to work with kids, but I also really like working with older adults. It's okay to be on that gamut. I think that, you know, both can be strengths for people, but I also want to sort of put it out there that sometimes you may end up being in a placement that you had no idea you would even like, or that would even fit for you. So I do encourage people to have an open mind, especially in that generalist year, because that's the time where you're going to be getting, it's an opportunity to be exposed to different times. So some people, they might know they want to do mental health with older adults, but in that generalist year, that might be an opportunity to try something really different. Think about kind of rounding out your whole experience here. I think the more that you can leave with rounded skills, the better you'll be. And the truth is, even if you end up working in you know, an agency with older adults, but you really want to be working with little kids, you're going to be getting skills in our generalist model, as Angela was explaining earlier, that are going to be used in any kind of setting. So no matter where you end up, you're going to be learning the things that you need, okay? Okay, so once your field faculty have talked with you, they're going to contact agencies. As I had mentioned earlier today, it's okay to have ideas. You know, maybe you work in Oshkosh, because that was an example that came up, and you really want to be at the homeless shelter in that town, and we've never placed a student there before. That's absolutely fine. What you would just do is talk to your agency or your supervisor, field faculty, sorry, about that, and then it would be their field faculty's job to contact the agency. Do they have a master's in social worker there? Is there someone who could provide social work supervision? What kinds of tasks would you be doing? Does that fit with what you already know or what you're hoping to learn? So it's their idea, it's their job to sort of vet that place and make sure that that's going to be a quality learning experience for you. Sometimes people get really anxious and they're like, oh my gosh, I've got to figure this out, and they take it upon themselves to try to set up their own placements. I want to caution you against that, because you're really not doing yourself any favor by doing that. We've had to rescind agreements that have been made because maybe it didn't fit our criteria for some reason or something like that. And I can understand that sense of like wanting to get it settled and have all this settled. But you're really not doing yourself any favors by just arranging this on your own, okay? We're just as invested as you in figuring this out and getting you into the right place. And we do have a well thought out process around that. So I just want to put that out there. Okay, so your field faculty will contact agencies that seem like they're appropriate for you, and they will give you the contact agency of that supervisor. You will then contact the supervisor or the agency in the preferred manner and set up an interview. Someone on the student panel suggested treating that like a job interview, and I agree with that. It can be competitive in some places to find placements. There may be other schools or other students that are sort of competing for that same. So you all have a lot to offer. I encourage you to put your best foot forward. You know, dress appropriately, have questions, know what you want to learn from that agency, have kind of reviewed their website, all that good stuff, okay? So you're gonna go to that interview, and let's say you love it. You're like, yes, this is the place, I found it. You'll confirm that placement with your field faculty, done, you're settled, okay? If it turns out that maybe it's not gonna be such a good fit, you went on the interview, thought it would be great, it's not quite right, you'll just wanna come back and talk to your field faculty about that, figure out what's going on. Maybe a different placement would be more appropriate. They can help to set that up. You kind of figure out next steps with them. Usually that can happen for up to 3 placements. If it turns out that 3 placements aren't working out for any reason, that's when you might have a conversation, you would have a conversation with me. And it's not punishment, it's just to help figure out like what's going on, what's getting in the way, what can we do to kind of figure out next steps, okay? Any questions about that? I know there's got to be some. Yes.
So I think this was kind of
touched on earlier, but there is potentially a possibility to do a field placement outside of standard work hours.
Yes, it is possible. It's just not common for some of the reasons that I think Angela mentioned, only that social workers tend to work 9 to 5. But if you're in an agency that offers services after hours and there's supervision available that can be arranged, that could very well be a possibility.
So then I can work with whoever my field instructor is to find that kind of placement for me, because at least with my current job, if I stay there, that's going to be kind of the only option.
Yes, exactly. So you would let your field faculty know, hey, this is a high priority for me to have nights and weekends. Also know that there probably are other students that have that, but nonetheless, you let them know and they will work it out with you. Yeah. Other questions? Yes.
Is there anything like conflict of interest that come about? Like I work in CPS, so if I want to be in like a school setting and I came upon a kiddo that I work with, would that be a conflict of interest that would prevent me from working there?
Coming across a student wouldn't probably constitute a big enough conflict of interest, but it's something to be aware of, and I'm glad you brought that up. That's something that you'll probably be talking in seminar about, those kinds of situations, and also with your agency supervisor, like this is probably gonna happen here, how will I handle this, how will we as an how do we handle these kinds of situations? Situations that are related to having maybe a supervisor that was once your therapist. Those kinds of things we want to know about ahead of time and avoid those, because that's not going to be a good learning experience for you. So there's a sort of a spectrum of that conflict of interest that if you're concerned about something coming up in that way, talk about that with your field faculty and kind of figure that out, because that's a really great point. I'm glad you brought it up because that's important. Yes.
Kind of go off of what she said, I think that wouldn't be something that would jeopardize the whole thing. I think then you just take the time and say, you know, I knew this, I had some contact, and I think confidentiality-wise, you can't be like, oh, I know this kid from CPS, you know, but you can just say, you know, for a confidential reason, whatever, because when I was doing, I do CPS in Ottawa, and when I was in Winnebago County, I actually had gotten a couple people that I had known because I lived in Oshkosh, and so, you know, we have to let them know, hey, I know this person, you need to make the case restricted on SACWIS and that kind of stuff, so I think that just like letting them know, like you said, is good, and having a conversation, and I think really thinking critically about like, how would it be a conflict of interest? You know, were you like the ongoing social worker for this family, so you know everybody and you shouldn't be giving any information to the school? Or is it you did an initial assessment contact or you met this family like one time, but the kid doesn't remember you?
Yeah, so there's a lot of nuance in that. And honestly, as social workers, this is something that we constantly deal with, you know, dual relationships and that kind of thing. So this is something that I imagine will come up a lot in your classes and in your field seminar. So, and it sounds like there's some good knowledge that you all already have, and I encourage you to contribute that to your discussion. So, other questions? I think I saw a hand over here today. Other questions? Oh, yeah. How do you get graded? Okay, I've got a slide about that. We're coming back to that one. Yes. Did you have a question too? Yes.
They want your like field placements like vary a little bit. Like if, like for example, I'm like pretty certain I want to do school social work.
Yeah.
Is it possible for both my field placements to be in schools?
I'm going to talk about that because there are different stipulations around types of placements that are available at different sort of the generalist or the advanced generalist level. But in general, I want everyone to be thinking about, because this is what your field faculty will be thinking about, is new learning. We want you to be in placements that offer new learning. So that doesn't exactly get at your question, but that is something that's important for us. Any other questions? Okay. Okay, so there was a question earlier about the types of placements that we, place people. Here are just a list of some examples. This isn't an exhaustive list, and I'm not going to read it, but it does give you an idea of the types of places that students are placed. To maybe go into a little bit more depth of what I was talking about, when you're in your generalist year, so if you're in the 4-year program and you're in year 2, you're doing your first placement, those placements are really focused on direct service and doing case management. So it's helping clients to navigate or negotiate systems, whether that's resources available to them, navigating their way through those. It might be you're doing counseling, you might be working in a shelter, you might be doing, let's see, like where else? I mean, these are just types of agencies, but it's basically sort of, it's working with different agencies, learning about the community, what's available, and working in a direct fashion with clients. When you're in your second placement, your advanced placement, that's when you're able to work according to your focus area. You have the coursework to support more specialized work. You're doing more autonomous, more complex work, and you're able to work in hospitals, school settings, or do clinical placements, meaning that you're diagnosing, assessing, and treating. So those types of placements, those three I just mentioned, are reserved for your advanced level placement, and it's more of the general, is going to be in your generalist level. Okay. Any questions about this? Is this making sense? All right, okay, we're like midway. Who's more anxious? Who's less anxious? Yes, I'm doing my job. Good, okay. All right, so this is the other big area that people have questions, and this is just about the hours. So let's talk a little bit about this. So in your generalist year, sorry, let me just get arranged here. Actually, before we go in this, I want to, before we go into the hours, I just want to also point out that in your folders, there's a handout called Field Important Dates. This sort of relates to that placement process, but this is also located on the website, and it just tells you a little bit about deadlines for that background check, things like that. So it gives information about the informational check-in meetings that we'll be offering in November. If you have questions or want to check in about anything, I'll be offering those as well as, and so you have information about that in your folder. Okay, sorry to get us off track there. Okay, so the field hours. So if you are in your generalist year, you are required to do 512 hours over the course of the whole year. That sounds like a lot, so I kind of like to talk about it usually in terms of semesters. So that's 256 hours a semester. You're going to be in your seminar 2.5 hours each Saturday. And so over the course of the semester, that's 35 hours that you will be in seminar. So you would subtract 35 from the 256 hours, and that leaves you about 221 hours that you'll be doing in your placements on site in the agency. So when you break down that our semester is about 15 weeks, if you include that exam week, that's going to equal about 14 to 16 hours per week. Okay, based on that 15-week semester. Some people don't want to work over the exam week, so they would divide that by 14 weeks, okay? So I want everyone to kind of figure it out for yourself, how many hours you need to be in your placement. But a general guideline is going to be 14 to 16. Sometimes people will sort of think about that. It doesn't have to be 2 days, but sort of thinking about it that way, like, okay, that's about 2 days worth in my placement. In your advanced practice year, kind of following a similar formula, you have 320 hours per semester. You're going to be in your seminar for 45 hours, and that's because advanced generalist placements start in August. We give you a little bit of extra time to do that. So you're going to subtract 45 hours from your 320, and that's going to leave you about 280 to be doing on-site. And that's about 16 to 18 hours per week based on that 15-week semester. Some people like to sort of, like maybe they have kids and they know they want to bank a little bit and do maybe a few extra hours just in case they have to take a day off. Similarly, if you have a wedding or something and maybe you have to miss a seminar, so sometimes thinking ahead, like, do I need to just gain a little bit of extra time? Talk with your field faculty about this. If this feels impossible to you, if this feels doable, bring up your concerns because they have ways of working this out individually with people. Sometimes people will work over into winter break, and they may count those hours toward their fall hours. Some people want to finish their fall hours right away and start working right on their over winter break into their spring hours. Some people don't want to work over winter break. So there's different options, and there's some flexibility around some of that, and that you're going to figure out on your own with your field faculty. Yes?
So the seminar starts in summer?
If you're in your advance, it starts in August. Yep.
And so then, is that class like separate to, like that's actually a class that we have to register for and pay for and everything? Or
That's right. It's sort of like it's just in the fall semester, but technically, like from the university standards, it's like a summer session.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then can we potentially start our field placement during that time, or is that kind of like a preparatory time?
You can start during that time. So that's the one exception to starting early, is that if you're in your advanced year, you can start in August. Yes. Did I see a hand here? Yes.
So does the 16 to 18 hours per week include that August start time, or is
That it doesn't, because that is based on a 15-week semester. Yep.
so if you start in August, it could be a little less?
That's right. Yes. But come spring, you won't have that extra month. So, but yes, that's right.
I have a second question.
Sure.
Has it ever happened where, I mean, things come up for people, you know, sometimes there's a death in the family or things like that. Like, has it happened where, like, you're getting to the end, you know, near graduation time and you don't think you'll be able to finish those hours by graduation? Has the school been flexible enough to allow a few more weeks or a month to finish up?
So the question is, if you're nearing graduation and you don't think you're going to finish, does the school offer some flexibility in terms of finishing up? That can vary. I'm going to say it depends, because it really does depend on the circumstances. It depends on if there's supervision available for you after graduation. It might entail paying extra money into that next semester. So if you're nearing graduation, it could be a little bit complicated, and I would suggest, if you think that's your situation, talk with your field faculty right away, and we will also include advisors in that kind of a scenario. So we really encourage you to finish on time. If, you know, fall into spring, there's more flexibility because you have that winter break, but come May, it's more important to like really finish because you have liability insurance. There's a lot of sort of like small moving parts related to that. So this counts for anything, but if you're worried about your hours or you're falling off track, let someone know right away, because we want to make sure that it doesn't turn into a crisis. We want to help you work through that. And then I saw a hand back here.
When we have field seminars, do we have classes in addition to that?
So the question is, when we're in field seminar, do we have classes in addition? You will be taking one other course at each time, I think, depending on if you're in the generalist or advanced generalist year. There's usually one other class that you're taking at that time. Yeah. Other questions about hours? Yes.
How many credits is the field seminar worth?
How many credits is the field seminar worth? If you are in your generalist year, I believe it's 4, and if you're in your advanced generalist, I think it's 5 or 6.
Awesome.
Yeah. Other questions? Yes.
I just want to make sure, like, we are allowed to work at our field over winter break when we're not technically in class. I know some schools do not allow their students to do that, so.
We do allow students to do that. We do ask that you get permission, obviously, from your agency, and that your field faculty is also okay with that. But yes, you're covered with your insurance and that kind of thing over that time. Yeah. Yes.
That 5 to 6 credits, is that 5 to 6 credits a semester? So like that would be the fall and then the following spring.
Okay, so the question, is that for both semesters, the 5 or 6 credits? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, like do you get 5 credits each semester, or is it just 5 credits total for that year?
Oh, I think it's per semester.
Okay.
Yeah. But don't quote me because I'm not an advisor, but yes, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I think, sorry. It's a little out of my scope of practice. Y'all will be learning about that too. Yes.
Do you have to do it like every week, or like if something happens and you miss it, can you do like extra hours one week, or is it like no, you have to go every week?
So the question is, do you have to do it every week, or can you, if you have to make up hours, can you do it a little bit later extra? We strongly encourage people to have a set regular schedule. And obviously if things come up, you know, you'd want to work that out with your agency supervisor, but having a set schedule is something that experience tells us keeps people on track the best. So sometimes exceptions need to be made, but yeah. These are great questions. Other questions? Okay, well, if they come up, just ask away. Okay, so these are some of the frequently asked questions that we get. Some of these we've talked about, so you all may know the answers. I'm going to throw it back at you. How do I keep track of my field hours? This is something that we haven't talked about, but everyone will get at the beginning of class an hours log. It's the official way that you will keep track of your hours. Your supervisor will sign it, and your field faculty will sign it, and you will sign it at the end of the semester. Some agency supervisors want to see that every week to know that you're on track. Some are like, just show me at the end of the semester. That's something that you're going to figure out together in your partnership with your field faculty and your agency supervisor. But we'll give you that form to use. It's like a spreadsheet. Can I count travel time for field hours? What do y'all think? Oh, yes, you're right. No, that's right. And the reason is because just like with employment, you're not allowed to get paid to go to work. If you are on site doing your placement and you're doing home visits or something, or you're traveling to a training or something, that would count. But the travel time to work and back home after work does not count toward your hours. Great. Can I work from home for field hours? No. You can't. And the reason is that we want you to have the experience of being in the agency, being a part of the life of that agency, and so doing work from home does not allow for that. So everyone is required to be on site for that. Can I attend trainings for field hours? Yes, you can. If you and your field faculty and your agency supervisor agree that this would be a great training for you, we encourage that. It's a great way to get additional professional development, learn new skills, learn new information. So that's absolutely fine as long as everyone's kind of in agreement about that. Yes?
If for part of your job, you go to trainings and things like that, is that something that you could ask and talk with your supervisor about, like, hey, my actual job is having me do this, and this is a training you'd be giving these CUs. Can we look at those too, or is it only through your internship?
So the question is, if through my job I get, if I have access to trainings, could I count that toward my field hours? That's something I would say you need to get permission from your agency supervisor and your field faculty. If they feel like that would be relevant to your placement, that would probably be fine. But I wouldn't assume that it is without getting their permission first. Yeah. Yeah. Can I start field hours in the summer? We kind of talked about this. Who knows the answer to that? Yes or no? Yes. No. It's kind of a dual one, right? Because yes, if you are an advanced student, you can start in August. But if you're a generalist student, no, you'll start in September. So everyone was right. Are there evening weekend hours available? Yes, possibly. When do I do my field hours? These will be done any time outside of class. So, Saturdays, mornings and afternoons, no, but you could do them at any other time that you are in agreement, the schedule that you set up with your agency supervisor. Can I complete field hours over winter break? We talked about that. Yes, that's absolutely possible. If you have everyone's agreement, field faculty and your agency supervisor, and it's sort of a planned action. I will say that I do encourage everyone to take some time off. It can be really helpful to rejuvenate. It's a personal decision, but lots of people do end up working over winter break, and also many take the time off. So it's your decision around that. Okay. Okay, so next we have the $1 million question. How am I going to juggle all of this? And we've talked about a number of possibilities already, having frank conversations, saying no to things. Some students, if their jobs allow them, to kind of bank time off or sick time, whatever kind of your agency offers you. Paid time off, I guess, would be the general term. Talking with family and loved ones about setting boundaries. I can't go to everything. I mean, it's a difficult time. I mean, it's a time when people are really juggling a lot. So just encourage you to think about that really carefully. Sometimes, this isn't everything, but it isn't every year of your placement. It's just for 9 months. So that's sometimes sometimes that can sort of provide a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel for people, because it's a hard time, but it's not forever. Any other questions about this? I feel like we've kind of talked about it, but yeah. Paid placement opportunities. We do have some paid placement opportunities that are already established. Also, agencies are able to pay a stipend to you if they want to. So it's sort of their decision around that. There are a couple of guidelines that we offer as a school around that, but that's a possibility too for people. But I will reiterate something that came up a little bit earlier. You're not allowed to do your job for your placement. So in that sense, you're not allowed to get paid for your work as your placement. Yes?
Is there ever multiple people that are having the same field placement option or at the same agency perhaps?
Yeah, so the question, are there ever multiple students at one agency? Yes, that frequently happens. So for example, there's a large mental health center here in Madison. They usually have up to 11 people. So if the agency is large enough, they have enough work, there's supervision available, it's totally fine to have more students. And actually sometimes it's really nice to have a little cohort. So some people do have that. Other questions? Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about, I was gonna do this cool poll where, you use your phone to kind of say a self-care activity that you all do or would anticipate doing, but I don't know, it's not coming up. I don't know, it worked in my office, but not here, I'm sorry. But in the spirit of it, what are some self-care things that people do or anticipate doing that might be helpful for next year when you're juggling a lot? Yes?
Yoga or stretching your body and breathing at the same time.
Yoga, stretching your body, and breathing. Yes, it's amazing, that breath thing. It's true. Yes, back here.
Meditation. There's a really great meditation app called Insight Timer that I use all the time.
I use Insight Timer too, every night. It's fantastic. I agree, it's great. Meditation was the suggestion. Yes?
I would say therapy. We have to practice what we preach. So, if we are therapists to some people, we need our own.
Yes, so therapy, practicing what we preach, right? It's good for us to take care of ourselves in that way too. That's excellent idea. Yes?
I love cooking, so I think taking the time to make myself and maybe my partner a really nice meal once a week, or maybe when it's my internship once every 2 weeks.
So cooking and engaging in something that's a really pleasurable activity. So yeah, you were saying once a week, maybe every other week during internship. Awesome. What other ideas do people have? Yes?
One of the things that I picked up was knitting.
Knitting.
And there may be a certain area of social workers that do this, and that's kind of their initiation into that specific unit.
Oh. Just saying, right?
We're expected to knit too, so, but it really helped to take a lunch break and work on a project.
Yeah.
Or, after work, or get together at a coffee house and knit for a couple hours or something like that. And yeah, it seems kind of silly or kind of old lady-ish, but it's actually a lot of fun to work on something like that, to have a project.
Yeah, so knitting, so the idea of having a way to socialize around a project. So I heard someone say a nice Christmas gift, but a nice, something that sounds like for you was an unexpected, really nice activity. So great. Yes, this will be our last one.
I would say exercise.
exercise, although it will probably be hard to find time at times to get to the gym or to just get out and go on a run.
Yeah.
I find running to be really helpful, and on long runs, my mind just kind of wanders, and it's almost like meditation once you're just going for a
Yeah.
run. So I think that would be really helpful.
Great.
Also keep us it helps your mood too. So if we're getting down, it'll kind of bring you back up.
So exercise, running, yeah, great. Sounds like the routine of it is also a helpful thing for you if you can kind of find the time. Excellent. These are really great ideas. And so everyone, just encouraging everyone to find their own something or some things that can really help. All right, so let's talk a little bit about support and grading. So, obviously we've been talking right now about how, what a busy year it can be, how stressful it can feel for some people, also how energizing. But either way, it's going to be, you're going to have likely many things going on in your life. So, but there are people in the school that are here to help you. So obviously your agency supervisor is there. They're going to understand really that day-to-day work that you're doing in the agency. They may have guidance to provide you around coping with that or how to be more effective in the agency, things like that. Your field faculty, field instructor, obviously that person is critical, and I encourage you to talk to them even when the littlest thing comes up. They're there to support you. One of the students said on the panel that the instructors here really care, and I really think that's true. We're people, and we're social workers, and we get it, and we want to get it, and we're here to listen, we're here to help you problem solve. So please know that that's available. I'm also available. Audrey Kahn is also available. If for some reason you feel like you don't want to talk to one of the other folks for some reason, there's options for you. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about sexual harassment. This is something that you all will be doing, since we're talking about support and things, you all will be doing a mandatory online training through the graduate school. You may have already done that. That's something that I believe you'll need to complete before, there's a deadline, but it might be before like winter break. September 21st. Okay, I was way off. So that's coming right up. So what I wanted to talk to you about is, so sexual harassment is like unwelcome sexual advances, expressed behavior related to of a sexual nature that are unwanted and unwelcomed. If something like that should happen, in terms of what can you do, I really encourage you not to dismiss those feelings of discomfort and also know that it's not your fault. I also encourage you to document that and to let someone know confidentially. So at the school, it's our job to make sure that you have a safe field experience. And so for that reason, it's really critical that you let someone in the school know about that. We would work with you to come up with a plan. There's a myriad of options, which might include consultation, perhaps consulting with the university Title IX office. We would come up with a plan with you. So nothing would be done without your knowledge or permission, but just to let you know, it's something that we take very seriously. If it should be that it's a client that has engaged in sexual harassment with you, that's something that you would want to talk with also your agency supervisor about, perhaps. I mean, maybe this is a clinical issue that needs to be addressed, or maybe you need to be not working with that client anymore, so they would be a great resource as well as your field faculty. If it turns out that it's a supervisor or a colleague, again, someone in the school would be able to work with you on that, and I really strongly encourage you to let us know, because we take it, again, very seriously and want you to be safe and feel safe in the work environment, and nobody should have that experience. So again, in terms of that support, your field faculty is here for support. I'm here. Audrey Kahn, the field director, is here, and we also have a sexual harassment liaison in the school named Tracy Schrepfer. She's a professor here in Madison who works, who's a great sort of confidential person to talk to about these kinds of situations. So I want to make sure you're aware of your resources around that. Any questions about this? All right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about supervision. This is really critical. Sometimes when people find that something's sort of getting off kilter in their placement, oftentimes it's because the supervision has sort of fallen off. So we really work with our agency supervisors to let them know this is so important for you students. And we also want to convey that message to you. It's your time to just debrief, to ask questions, to talk about your clients, to talk about agency culture. All kinds of things can occur. But we do require it to be face-to-face 1 hour a week. Your field faculty can also be a supervision source. So sometimes maybe you have your supervisor doesn't have an MSW, but they have a related field. But it's been deemed that they have enough experience and knowledge to be an appropriate supervisor for you. It might be that your field supervisor provides some extra supervision to make sure that you have that social work perspective. So there can also be a source of supervision. You'll be identifying the time of that supervision in your learning plan. And again, if you're not having it, please discuss that immediately. Lots of times in seminar, it'll come up like how to take advantage of supervision. So talking about tips and ways to prepare, those are great things to talk about in seminar with your field faculty also. All right, so we kind of talked about the field seminar, so I'm really not going to go too much into this, but these are the names of the seminars and the classes. They're every Saturday, 9 to 11:30. Typically, there's 7 to 16 students in those, and people are assigned based on their focus area and where they are in the program. Okay, so these are the things, we kind of talked about this too, but you're gonna get support. You are going to have assignments. Typically, assignments are things related to what you're doing in your placement. So when I was teaching the mental health field unit, for example, students were asked to do journals to kind of reflect on what they were doing or where they were in their placement. We asked them to do a process recording, so listen to a recording of a therapy session and write out what was said as well as some of the things that you were thinking about. Sometimes other field seminars will do things around an analysis of an agency or doing a presentation. Almost everyone has a change agent project where you think about a change you could instill in the organization, you talk with stakeholders, and you sort of implement that change. So there's a number of assignments that you are graded on. Your grade will reflect your performance both in your field placement as well as the seminar. So you will be doing a learning plan as an assignment. So you're graded on that as well as the evaluation that will happen at the end of each semester and other feedback. And your seminar leader will look at your professionalism in the placement, in your class, your participation, your attendance, all of those kinds of things go into your grade as well. Getting a grade of C or lower is a very serious issue. It means that you would not be able to continue in the program because a grade of C or lower is considered failing. That doesn't happen often, but again, that's why I really encourage everyone, if your things feel like they're off or something's going on, let someone know right away, okay? And kind of, knowing that about grades, I guess I also like to add, maybe echo some of the things that Steph Roberts said in the beginning, that this program and your master's degree is really about your learning and less about your grade. In some ways you do need to be mindful not to get less than a C, but in some ways your grade is less important than the ways that you're growing and changing and the risks that you're taking and the ways that you're developing. Similarly, the connections that you make both with peers and instructors, those are the folks that will be recommending you and will be encouraging you to try new jobs. So your relationships are also really important. Being able to be constructive in those are really important things. All right. I'm not going to go over this too much, but we'll be giving you more information about all of these documents that you will be either using or needing to complete as part of during your time in field education. So the preference form we talked about, Let's see, the duty to disclose, that's something that we didn't talk about, but you all probably filled that out already, letting you know that if any sort of legal or sort of arrest or things like that come up, you would need to disclose that to us when that happens. It could impact a placement or something like that. We also have you sign a consent to release information, which allows your field faculty to talk with your agency supervisor. The field handbook, I encourage you to read that. If you have a question about field, check there first, because chances are all that information is there. If not, then come and talk with us. Your learning plan you'll be talking about in your seminar. Your hourly log we talked about, and your evaluation document, all of that is available for you to see on the website. All right, I am running out of time, so I'm gonna go super fast on this. We've talked about a lot of these. Placements are unpaid except for stipends. We want new learning for you. Your field placements are appropriate for your focus year and your year in the program. We've talked about all of these things. Okay. Your field faculty is the person that develops the placement opportunities. They maintain contact with your agency and the supervisor there. They facilitate your field seminar. Your agency supervisor, their roles are to orient you to the program, give you feedback on your performance and your learning plan. They're professional role models for you. Your role as a student learner, you'll probably be talking more about that in our next session on professionalism, but I do encourage you to read through this in the handbook and understand, we're a professional program, and so professional behavior is something that we're honing and practicing and evolving in all the time, and it's something that we do really take seriously. So the way that you are in seminar is, we're gonna assume that that's also how you are in your placement, and the way that you are, we want to see that professional behavior in all of the things that you're doing while in the program. If you have questions, contact me or Amy, all right? Thank you so much for your attention. This was a lot of information. I really appreciate it. If you have questions, find me afterwards. And you'll also have opportunities for you to continue to have some touch points around this. So thanks a lot.